Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WREVA Electrifying News June edition 2024. With me, as always, my two co-hosts. We have Mr. Ian Graham joining us from downtown Kitchener. How are you today, sir?
Crossing fingers that Edmonton will win one game at least, and they got a goal. They got a goal on the goalie. Man, what is it with Florida teams and Russian goalies that they like Tampa, right? And they did so well, and then now we got Florida, and it's been an interesting series. I mean, Edmonton really outplayed Florida in the first game. The second game, it's not the same, but it's been great hockey, and I really look forward to tonight's game as well.
Yeah, it's all those snowbirds. So,
yeah.
Also with us, as normal, we have Mr. Eric Stevens joining us from the Listowel area. How are you today, sir?
I am doing fantastic, Mark.
Excellent, excellent. I hope everyone's enjoying the great EV weather we've been having, and it's been wonderful for range, obviously, for some time, but get out there and enjoy it, because, of course, summer is not going to last forever. It's about to start, and don't let it pass you by.
Exactly.
So Ian's got a deck he's going to start up for us, and we'll go through this month's stories.
All right. Well, we're going to start off with kind of getting into some politics for the first few things of tonight's podcast. And of course, it's been interesting with the tariffs that are happening on Chinese electric vehicle imports, including, the EU as well.
Absolutely. We've got an issue now, or I guess a situation that has been growing in severity over the past little while, that Chinese manufacturers, of course, who have been leading the EV movement in volume, are now starting to flex their muscle and push some of these cars into other jurisdictions where they may not be making them, but just shipping them in. So we've got the European Union that's started to notice that their auto industry is being cannibalized somewhat by Chinese imports. And we've got the North American market, which is trying to avoid this as well. And they're seeing that China could do a lot of importing into countries that are even part of the North American Free Trade Act. So you've got the possibility of, for example, BYD taking over a plant in Mexico and then making some, but shipping some to that plant. And then, of course, having access to the North American market. The U.S. has already put a 100% tariff on EVs, and the European Union had already had a tariff in place, but now they're about to boost it. So this is the start of a bit of a trade war between the West and China, and it has been brewing for some time. So I'm not really surprised it's starting to come to a head, but it'll be interesting to see how this is going to affect us. Obviously, the other part of it is that the political solution in both China and the West are opposing each other. Not too long ago, Canada had two basically hostages taken by China, the two Michaels, that were held in China against their will for many, many months. Ultimately, were released. But this is something that is starting to come to a head, and we're going to be living through the consequences shortly.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this is part of a greater economic and political situation right now. Certainly, manufacturers in Europe and in North America want to protect their auto industries. The auto industry is obviously a huge a sizable portion of the economies in the U.S. and Europe. So, there's always that threat of another group coming in with those types of things, using questionable practices sometimes to get stuff here as well too. So like a lot of these Chinese EV companies have significant state ownership and significant I would say loans and intellectual property that have been granted to them through questionable means. So, part of the reasons why Chinese EVs are less expensive is for not always for the best reasons, I would say. So, and so there's a it's a complicated subject, but yeah, there's a lot of economics going on there, and there's a lot of politics involved as well too.
Yeah, it's interesting that, we're talking about electric vehicle aspect, but of course, there's also been the renewable energy with the solar aspect of, Chinese made solar panels. And of course, like you say about some of the questionable practices, that was another thing that, was coming up because was this, import from, because there's Vietnamese now and South Korean panels, but then, also was the Chinese aspect influenced by some of this stuff. And yeah, like there's a lot of questionable practices. I find it interesting, like Mark's mentioned about BYD and Mexico. And, if you look on BYD's website, there is a full out website in Spanish for Mexico. And it's kind of an interesting area of where this could kind of lead off into, and whether some of those vehicles could eventually make their way up into US and Canada for that matter. But it's, here we go, like, back to the trade wars again and everything. Now, that being said, I'm going to go on to our next slide, because our next slide, interesting enough, is also, again, has to do with the Chinese aspect of things, but where Canada is going to have a pretty positive influence, I think.
Yeah, so this is an interesting story where, this is the first time since the Second World War that the U.S. Department of Defense has invested in companies outside of the United States. And so basically what's happening here is the U.S. Department of Defense is investing in mining operations for specific resources in Canada. And this is being done for strategic reasons, basically. Some of these minerals and some of these things, China has a lion's share of the global marketplace on some of these elements. So, but Canada also has, in many cases, some of these elements, but they're just not developed, or they haven't been properly matured. And that's looking to change here now, where the U.S. Department of Defense is making these investments into Canadian companies. Now, it opens up some interesting questions. Here the U.S. military is investing in the mining industry. If a conflict were to ever come out, there's probably a lot of stipulations and stuff attached to this money as well too. It talks about that a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see how that might potentially play out as well too.
Mm-hmm. That certainly could help the Canadian mining industry, though. Like give them a kickstart. Some infrastructure has to be made. That infrastructure could also serve for other companies to maybe develop in the same area or offshoots in a slightly geographic area, but benefit from some of the trade and resources that are going into that said area would be a benefit to those other companies too. So I think that the Canada mining industry certainly could benefit from this investment.
Yeah. And I think our, back and forth negotiations are going to be a lot more diplomatic between Canada and the US with something like this. And of course, the Canadian industry with the mining aspect is going to realize, it's a great opportunity for them. But I'm pretty sure they have a pretty good understanding why the U.S. military is being involved with this aspect of things. And especially too, like Eric mentioned, the historical significance of this. It's been quite some time since we've seen this with the U.S. military in discussions with Canadian companies on this part of it. Now, that being said, going to go to our next slide yet again. It seems like everything's kind of tied together tonight. Sudbury just hosted a conference at the end of May recently, and it's a major conference that has to deal with electric vehicles, with mining, and bringing a lot of the industry together to have some, panel discussions and that. Our friend Devin from the Greater Sudbury Electric Vehicle Association is part of this as well. But anyways, an interesting aspect, talking about, the minerals that Canada has and what mining aspect we're dealing with. Sudbury, the mayor is looking at them as Sudbury as being the new Fort Mac, as he's calling it. And the reason for this is because it's an in-between of a company from Australia that is doing mining up in the James Bay area, and hence the Ring of Fire. But they need a place to process everything, and Sudbury is looking more and more to be that place. Now, there was talks also, why couldn't they have done this in Thunder Bay? But Sudbury has the CN Rail aspect of things, and also they have made a partnership with the city of Kingston in terms of the battery manufacturing aspect. So it becomes this kind of like chain down the line. And again, some more great opportunities for, not just Ontario, but Canada in general, but, especially, and, for the city of Sudbury, who, they're no slouch when it comes to mining, of course.
Yeah, I think the benefit here is, as we've seen all throughout the EV supply chain recently, over the past number of months, is that this is just another part, another domino to fall. As companies look for places, in this case, to process raw material, being hooked up to a CN rail line that has capacity gives the people the ability to add to an existing rail line to get it to Southern Ontario, Kingston, or other places within Ontario or the United States. And transportation is key, especially when it comes to raw material processing and the ability to link it to other supply chain items. You've got to have that strong network of transportation available to you.
Yeah, I think one thing that I see here is, unlike Fort Mac, where largely that's oil sands operations, and basically we take that resource and we send it someplace else to get it processed. Here we're actually now looking at a value add, where we're not just pulling raw minerals out of the ground and sending it someplace else to be processed. Now we're actually processing them here and actually building a value added finished goods here in Canada, here in Ontario. So I think this is an important piece of that puzzle. And again, having the greater ecosystem of clean energy, relatively clean power grid, the resources, the manufacturing capability, we just have a lot of the pieces in place to make this happen. So,
yeah, there's some great opportunities that are happening here, and Sudbury, really could use something like this again. I mean, it's not like they're not doing mining and that, but this would just be another aspect to help benefit them in general. So, all right. Moving along, talking about where we're going to take all these minerals, get the batteries done up, but then, of course, we've got the automotive corporations and what's happening within Ontario as well with this.
Exactly, and this is kind of a extension of what we've talked about in previous discussions here on Electrifying News. This article does a good job of outlining the changes that have happened in the Ontario automotive industry over a period of time, from the heydays of 30, 40, 50 years ago up until today. Also, the days of decline are rolled into this article as well. So it does a good explanation of how Ontario has come from a rich automotive manufacturing background, and how times got lean into the late 80s, 90s, and then, of course, within the past 10, 15 years, how the government and industry combined to start to build up an EV infrastructure that could allow us to come out of those lean automotive times and actually become a bit of a powerhouse when it comes to North America with the production and the sourcing of materials for EVs. So again, I think we've seen this as a recent win for Ontario. It has been about a 10, 15-year project that they've been looking at this. And just, in the past I would say 5 years, the fruits of what they have laid out in front of them are actually coming to bear, and the market and the jobs are coming with it. So this is a great article to review it, to see where we've been, where we were, and now where we're going. And I think it's a positive look as to how industry and the government of Canada and Ontario have actually combined their efforts to go after a goal. And in this case, they've been able to knock down those dominoes and achieve that goal. And the announcements of factories and suppliers and tax revenue that will be coming from all of that is a huge win for the country and the province.
Yeah. I like that, seeing the investment in this, just the announcement that this is the largest direct foreign investment that's been in Canada ever in history so far is a big deal. And this kind of shows, Honda's operations are in Alliston, Ontario. They're not that far of a drive, up to 400 from Sudbury, basically. So now, again, just following on the chain of stories that we have here, Sudbury is going to be helping to mine the resources, processing them, producing active cathode material, and then sending that down to facilities like in Alliston, where they can process that, actually make battery cells, battery packs, and then assemble them into cars. So we're actually, developing the full circular supply chain here in Ontario for this. And, Sudbury has the mining experience. Regions like Alliston and much of Southern Ontario has the automotive manufacturing experience and a lot of expertise in automation. So, and in fact, we're leading the charge in many ways and being leaders in facility automation. So, we have a lot of the pieces in place to land these types of big deals.
Yeah. Now, in the article, I posted this on our last sort of point, in the article, it is claimed that the electrical grid won't hold up, that EVs aren't better for the planet, blah, blah, blah. And, these are, again, back to, it's interesting that there is this amount of investment. And Eric, as you pointed out, that it's one of the biggest. I mean, I was going to put in 14 billion myself. They beat me out at 15 billion because, I just got that laying around. But no, it's just the fact that, what is it that these big corporations, automotive-wise, that have been in the business for so long, that then we still get the naysayers about, all of this stuff. And yet, you don't just take 14 or 15 billion dollars and just, oh yeah, well, we'll try it out. We'll see what happens. No, they really got their research done in a lot of the stuff. And I think when it comes down for the last point, the problems that people have will eventually come to the point where it's like there is no real problems. You're making a bigger thing about this than really what it needs to be. And of course, with the grid aspect of things, a lot of people still don't understand that we are kind of in the infancy of it all, but the vehicle to grid technology and how that will help as well. With the batteries in the cars, dealing with that.
I think that this article, it just kind of shows the naivety of some that are writing an article, that they feel that they have to throw in an opposite point, even though there's really no merit to the point. When they say that the grid may not hold up, like that is such a general statement that was thrown around maybe 15 years ago, and has proven to be untrue because, of course, Ontarians and other Canadians are going to follow the charging price drop when it comes to evening, when we have an abundance of electricity, and when we're in some cases we're having to give it away to our neighbors in order to stabilize the grid. What a better way to do than to put that energy back into the taxpayers' cars and allow them to use that electricity for transportation. So again, I think there was just kind of, trying to balance the discussion inside the article, which I really don't agree with the facts that they had chosen here.
Yeah, I kind of found that a little interesting that they did kind of throw that in there. But, it's something that we, even with our own groups, we kind of fight the fight all the time, and probably privately as well, But anyways, very, very cool on that, what we're getting in terms of investments. So. All right, speaking of the grid, next couple of articles actually are about the grid.
Yes. So talking about EVs and taking down the grid and all that stuff, which we know is not going to happen because of things like this that are happening. And basically, so the IESO, for those that don't know, is the Independent Electric System Operator in Ontario. So they basically help manage the grid in Ontario, basically. And they're funding some proposals and some projects where they want to look at ways to manage vehicle to grid and EV charging projects, basically out there. So that they want to see how EVs can better tie into the grid, and they want to they're putting up proposals out there to look at solutions to improve the reliability, sustainability, and the affordability of the grid. So they're looking for stuff like that, and they're also looking for space and water heater applications, which is also a big energy consumer in Ontario as well too. But on the EV supply side, I think this is a big deal because a lot of EVs that are coming out today are now starting to already have some inherent vehicle to grid capability. Some of the protocols that are out there today have that now. The vehicle I have today actually has vehicle to grid capability in it. So once the General Motors is already selling a solution that they actually already have a division called GM Energy now, and you can actually buy packages to tie your vehicle to the grid. They're not yet certified for Canada, unfortunately, but they are pushing them in the U.S. right now, and then hopefully coming to Canada soon. So, and there are certainly other manufacturers who are doing other products, and there's other third-party stuff out there now as well too that are starting to tie in solar panels, power inverters, and EV batteries in their house for how to use your battery to help stabilize the grid, maybe even sell power back to the grid occasionally, a battery backup system for your house, all sorts of different options and possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is something that a lot of the people, the naysayers 10 years ago, when they were talking about our grid, really don't understand, is that the grid is not a static thing. It does not remain the way it was in 1979. It is a constantly moving thing where they're looking for improvements, they're looking at better ways to manage, and they're looking at how the expansion is going to be required based on the statistics that they have as to how Canadians and Ontarians are using that electricity grid in the past, in the present, and where they believe it's going in the future. So enhancements will come based on how we use those electricity assets. And those are things that will force the grid and the industry as a whole to move somewhat to keep up with demand that we're putting out there. So it's not a static thing. This grid will change with our needs, and that's something that's going to happen at all times.
Yeah. And
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say it's already driving innovation today. So there's already a lot of great products that are coming to the market, and there's a lot of great things that are happening. So, and as they proliferate into the marketplace, I'm excited to see some of the things that are coming. So
yeah. Well, one thing too, when it comes to, we're hearing more about, how battery backup is becoming a thing. We see projects in Australia, California, Newmarket. We have, of course, there's a battery backup system up in that area as well with the mega packs and stuff. But geez, what a great battery backup when you have all these electric vehicles that we've just put billions of investments into. And why wouldn't you have this as part of your storage system? One quick thing, it just came up a couple of days ago in terms of the space heating and cooling, let's say, the air source heat pumps. Eric, you and I both, we now have our homes on air source heat pumps. They're awesome. In New York, and there's a whole new thing going on, and there's two companies, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of the companies, but they're for all the apartments, and you're talking about, Boston and New York are pretty old structures, where you can take this unit, and it's shaped like a U, and it goes in your window, and so the U kind of goes over the window ledge, and it's ultra efficient air source heat pumps. Now, they are a little more expensive, of course, but when you look at what's going on with the structure aspect of the old heating and cooling in a lot of these buildings, they're not efficient, they're gas related, everything this way. this is, again, I guess, where I kind of look at with these innovative proposals that they're doing some of the stuff is because that technology is also changing that way, where not only are, heating and cooling a home is one thing, but for apartments, and especially older apartments, this is going to be yet another interesting aspect of things, and part of the grid reliability and sustainability of it all. So it's going to be pretty cool. So from our grid to Germany, where they have their grid, and it's not schmutz at all. No, it's interesting. Germany, a couple of things. And of course, I was just in Europe last month, and I spent about 5-6 days in Germany. I can tell you, like, every third to fifth home had solar panels on it. It's a beautiful country and everything. But the big thing on this is that the BEV aspect of Germany, they're putting 1.27 million battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids in 2023, but they were just number 2 behind China. Of course, China's global EV production, is most of it's sold domestically. Germany, 76% are sold abroad. I found that to be an interesting number as well. So they do a lot with the exports. The big other thing about Germany that another article came up was that this first quarter, Germany is renewable energy supplied 58.4% of all their electricity, and that number is only going up as well. And fossil fuels, sorry guys, plummeted 25%. This is awesome to see. It's giving more proof to the world that renewables can be a major part of our electrical transition shift. And that, some people always will say, oh, but Germany's, it's nowhere the size of Canada. That doesn't matter. It's all relative to everything when it comes down to it. 90% of Canada's population is all the southern provinces. So if you, broke it apart into a whole bunch of little Germanys, I think we'd be okay with all this type of stuff. And being that we have even more land mass to put up wind and to put up solar, Canada could definitely do something like this very easily. Do we need those gas peaker plants that Ontario's wanting to push through? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, in this case, I think there's a lot of things going on in Germany, a lot of positive stuff. Some of it's with the gun to their head with some of the stuff that's happening right now. So, they went through a situation a while back after the Fukushima Daiichi scenario where they were concerned about nuclear power. So Germany went through this whole phase where they started phasing out nuclear power. But when they did that, they had to replace that power with something else. And they started making big investments in renewables at that time. But they started leaning heavily on like Russian gas for power generation for a long time. Now, obviously, we all know what happened a couple of years ago and what's still going on today with the conflict in Ukraine. And obviously now, Germany sees that strategically they cannot be leaning and be dependent on Russia for its energy sources. So they're in the last couple of years, they have been making huge investments into renewable energy as well, too. To mitigate their dependence on Russia for some of its energy needs and things like that as well too. Mm-hmm. And then even for EV production, stuff like that, one of the largest car manufacturer in the world is kind of tied sort of between Toyota and the Volkswagen Group right now today. And Volkswagen Group a long time ago went through its Dieselgate scandal. And when Volkswagen went through Dieselgate, the big thing they did is we're going to go to EVs and we're going to transition. They made some, $100 billion investments into transitioning to EV production. And so, a lot of the, reasons why Germany is the second largest EV producer partially is because of the big investments that Volkswagen made early to build EVs. And of course, other German manufacturers have followed suit. Mercedes and BMW have also made sizable investments in EV production as well. So, Germany's been looking ahead, and strategically they've been forced to. But it's been showing that for the most part, it's been working for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's something that, as Eric has mentioned, Germany's had a gun to their head for a few of these different things. Yes, they started early with solar. They had some bumps in the road with solar, but they got the technology down. They understood what it could bring the country, and they pushed it for a number of years. And of course, with these two recent things that came along, Dieselgate, and of course the Russian war, they've had to accelerate some of this stuff to make up and make sure that they could rely on their own internal resources and of course the resources of Europe in order to get through these tough times. So I think with the initial investments that they made in solar, it allowed them to get a run out of the gate. And with this, with this arm tied behind their back and being pushed, I think they had the ability to make the program go faster. And I think they're going to benefit from that. And I think the rest of Europe can benefit from their expertise in these areas as well. So I certainly don't wish that another country has to, have the gun put to their head, but certainly you can use Germany's case as to how they reacted to it and what steps they took. We could learn a lot of things from them. Canada could, the US could, others can, just based on how they reacted.
Yeah, yeah. Now, it was interesting with the export aspect of things. Of course, unfortunately, we don't have the ID3 here in Canada, but I did see a lot of ID3s in Scotland and actually more so even in England, in London. So it was cool. It was really cool to see that. And great points. Of course, Germany's, got faced with some aspects of crisis. Like you say, between Russian gas and the nuclear aspect of things. And you know what? Good for them. I think it's a good case study for a lot of other countries to move forward with their own renewable energy aspects and for that matter, electric vehicle aspects of things too. All right. From German sausage to rotisserie chicken and charging at Metro.
So this is, I think, is a very good announcement, basically. I like this for a lot of reasons. Metro has announced that in Ontario and Quebec, they're going to be rolling out DC fast charging to 130 different locations. So for those who don't know, Metro stores also include, some other type brands as well too. Metro has a number of brands under its charging umbrella, basically. But basically, they're going to be partnering with Flow to install 500 DC fast chargers at 130 different grocery stores. And they're going to be doing this by 2027. These will be Flow's new ultra chargers, 320 kilowatt. So very, very nice power, very nice capacity. And what's nice about this as well too is I think putting DC fast charging in grocery stores, I think just makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. If you're a person who lives in a condo or an apartment or something like that, and you typically you might need to only charge once a week, you can pull up to get your groceries, plug in, get your groceries, come back out, and by the time you're done, you're ready for another week again. So at that point, DC charging is not an inconvenience for you at that point. It's part of you're already running your errands to get your groceries. Well, part of that errand can now be to charge your car at the same time, and have that done as well too. So I think this helps solve some issues with some of the infrastructure gaps we have today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having that ability to choose whether you're going to do an L2 charge over 2 or 3 hours, or do a fast charge in 25, 30 minutes. More choice for people that don't have access to chargers or do have access to chargers and are just traveling through. You can't go wrong. Having these extra resources available is a big plus for anyone that owns an EV, because we all know that as consumers that when there's more choice, it works better for consumers. So I applaud the effort, and I am interested to see how these new Flow chargers stand up, and hopefully they're as rock solid as some of the Generation 1 Flow chargers that we've seen out there today.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting today. I was at a meeting of investors for a company that does apartment, industrial, and retail, basically holdings, REITs as we call them. And I brought up the Metro flow, and the retail guy said that, yeah, we've heard about this. His argument was like, he didn't feel that people were going to use this the same way because they're already probably charged at home. But of course, then we bring up, well, you also have apartments within this portfolio, and how many people, are charging at the apartments? Do you have the infrastructure for that part of it? And so, yeah, I think this is where this is a good thing that's going to come about, and especially too the 350 320 kilowatts, up to 20 kilowatts. My God, it's like, we're right now getting 80% within 15, maybe 20 minutes. I think I'm looking at this going like, well, yeah, you're going to be done your car charging much further in advance than when you're done your groceries with this type of speed. And for the people who do live in condos and that, this makes everything that much more reasonable. It'll be interesting to see what the cost will be per kilowatt, what they will charge, because currently, we're seeing 50 to 60 something cents a kilowatt, on the Tesla network, etc. And it'll be interesting to see what these charges will end up being. It'll probably be something similar, I'm sure. But hey, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for those that don't know, the Metro grocery stores, Metro brand there's a few in Ontario Metros around. But the more popular one that we'll probably know of is Food Basics. So Food Basics is also owned by Metro. So
right. Another great store to shop at.
Yeah.
All right. So is an article that I saw this week, and I bring up because, again, with the technological aspects of improvements and solving those problems, I found this is kind of an interesting article in that, one of the biggest things myths that we hear. And of course, last night, I couldn't believe 2 friends actually posted, oh, here's 2 electric vehicles that crashed and they're in Canada and they're just exploding everywhere. And meanwhile, it was a truck with a vehicle in Russia that had gas canisters that were, and of course you could tell it by the explosions. But it was interesting, though. This article came out, and the researchers and the scientists, they used what was the materials in a commercial fire extinguisher and made this part of the electrolyte within the battery. And of course, as I put here, the nail penetration test is a big one. So if you've ever seen a lithium battery and you punch a nail through it, it starts to spark. And of course, then it's a chain reaction. It just keeps kind of going from there. But if they can get this process, commercialized at mass level, and that it'll basically shut up every, the naysayer, especially too when they're trying to say, EVs just catch on fire and they're so hard to put out. Meanwhile, we have over 2,000 plus gas fires for every one electric vehicle fire, is about the last stat that I came across. So again, this is just technology, just sort of showing, hey, we got a problem. What an interesting way to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this kind of thing, but doesn't surprise me. I guess I work in the plastics industry today. And so when you get into wire and cable installations and stuff like that, we add a lot of fire retardants to cable installations. And how those fire retardants work is their chemical composition. When they heat up enough, one of their byproducts is water. They start to chemically react and produce water when they get to a certain temperature and start to burn. And then they can self-extinguish themselves. So when we do flame tests, we actually hit a wire and cable 5 times with a flame. And then afterwards, remove the flame and we count for how long it takes for the flame to go out for the flame retardants to self-extinguish the cable. It doesn't surprise me that those types of chemicals and that type of knowledge will eventually work its way into some of the chemical reactions used for the electrolytes and batteries and stuff like that as well. So,
yeah, great idea to use some of the current technology for putting out fires as electrolyte. and being able to self-extinguish. This is just another example of the industry maturing, seeing different advantageous ways to use chemicals or processes to make things better. And I don't see any of this stopping. This type of innovation will continue with EVs and their products, their subproducts, their supplies as time goes along.
Mm-hmm. Eric, it sounds like I should apply for your company job position there. If you guys get to play with fire and have some fun with that, that sounds like a good time.
we try to find ways to break things all the time. So
I was gonna say, a bunch of quote unquote teenagers who are like, a little older now and still playing with fire.
Controlled
fires. Yes. Oh man. All right. Well, for our last slide, and this is a really interesting one because, of course, we have been seeing electric vehicle prices have been coming down. And of course, the biggest thing that, we always hear about is the whole gas parity when an electric vehicle is the same price of what a gas vehicle is. Well, I mean, we all know that even an electric vehicle that is a little bit more than a gas vehicle, it doesn't take long to recoup that cost when you're charging at home, and it's so much cheaper to charge at home. But here's Canada's 7 cheapest EVs for 2024.
Yeah, I'd like to label it as Canada's most affordable EVs for 2024. Cheapest is just
they have no flame retardants in these cars.
Well, cheapest implies bad quality.
Exactly. Affordable is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
But certainly this article from Driving is available in the link, as well as all the other articles we talked about today. So you can go back to them at your leisure. But in this particular article, they talked about 7 of the most affordable vehicles, starting, of course, with the Fiat 500e, a new release that's come to Canada at just under $40,000 mark. And of course, these vehicles are going to have different mileages. They're going to be different sizes. Not all applications will work for everybody, but what I thought was nice about this article is it is giving you some different options and showing you the difference in prices when it comes to those options, so you can judge what's best for you or your family before you start looking in earnest and actually doing some test drives. Next on the list is the dependable Nissan Leaf SV that has been around for quite some time. This, of course, is the second-gen Leaf. Just under $42,000. The Kia Niro EV jumps up to about $45,500, and that battery size is about 40 kilowatts. And as mentioned, the ranges and sizes of the batteries are different in this list, but we're trying to show affordability here. Neck and neck with the Kia is, of course, the Hyundai Kona electric at $46,400, basically. And then a new entry that is about to start to be delivered in Ontario, I believe, is the Chevy Equinox EV at $48,200. And the Volkswagen ID4 at $48,500, which has been around for quite some time and is probably in I guess it's probably been its 3rd year at least it's been in operation.
Mm-hmm.
And notable mention is that Mazda has introduced the MX-30 at $42,650. And unlike the Mazda you may be thinking about that had the really small battery, this one is it's a medium battery. It's about 161 kilometers of range. With about a 35.5 kilowatt battery in it. So yes, it's on the low end, but it's certainly a four-door SUV, small size that can be used. And again, depending on your actual situation, it might fit in very well with how you operate and where you drive. So it really depends on the individual, but these are some places to start to look to see if an affordable EV would be of interest to you or your family, and what those prices and ranges are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every time I see this Fiat 500e, I think of it as, if Godzilla ever came and attacked, this would be like a little gumdrop for him.
Little jelly bean, yeah.
A little jelly bean, yeah. Just pop it in his mouth. It'd be a great product placement for Fiat, the next Godzilla movie.
One of the things I find interesting is, we are starting to see more and more affordable EVs coming to market and stuff like that. But I also see the announcements coming and some of the vehicles that are also coming to market shortly as well, too. And so over the next year or two, I see some of these prices coming down drastically as well, too. An example there is we have the Equinox EV at $48,000. That's actually the 2LT version. Later this year, they'll have a 1LT version that's $41,000. And it still has an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack and over 500 kilometers of range.
Wow.
And then you've got vehicles like there's a new Jeep Renegade that's coming. So far, Stellantis has been saying that in the United States it's going to be priced at roughly $25,000 US. We shall see what that translates to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The reality.
But it's obviously leaning on probably some of the STLA smalls that are already sold in Europe today, similar to the Fiat 500e that's sitting here as well too. And then there's, of course, the Bolts will be making a comeback. Later next year, we'll see a 2026 Bolt come to market with a more affordable lithium iron phosphate battery as well too. And it's General Motors is promising that'll be the most affordable EV in the US. So we'll see what that translates to in Canada as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it certainly is good to see that some of these prices are starting to show up at a lower rate. And as Eric mentioned, it looks like we're not at the floor. These prices will continue to drop, and that's going to be a big plus for everybody out there to be able to get involved with an EV at an affordable price.
Yeah. And there's been a bunch of other announcements like the Kia EV3 and stuff as well too. It's another EV that's coming that's going to be affordable as well. So.
It's going to be, the future is looking pretty interesting, especially not only with affordable cars, but then, of course, our, as we've been talking for quite some time with the jobs aspect within Ontario and within Canada and the opportunities that are coming about here. And it's just looking better all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Very good. Well, with that, we certainly want to thank everyone that's joined us to watch this video tonight. If you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up on the video. Press that subscribe so that you get notifications when we put these episodes to air. Oh, great graphic, Ian. Look at that.
I just happened to notice that and was like, hey, does this work? It does work. Woo!
How about that?
We'll have to do it at the beginning of the podcast from now on.
Now that we know it works, yeah. So
didn't cut us off either.
Also wanted to bring to people's attention that the Emerge Guelph is putting on a trip to West 5 in London, which of course is the sustainable community for Saturday, June 22nd, which is coming up in just over a week. If you're interested in getting a guided tour through that net zero community, I suggest you go to the Emerge Guelph website and registering. And I've been on the tour previously, and you'll be able to see the most up-to-date version of the community with both, of course, residential homes and apartments, as well as a commercial aspect that they have as well. So all powered basically by solar and heated with heat pumps, air source heat pumps. So you'll get a great view as to what is available or can be available in Ontario today with some data as to how they've been operating through the winters, because they have been open for a number of years now. So you've got some information there that you can mine if you have interest. With that, reach out to Eric. Any shout outs for this evening?
I guess only one I'm going to say is for those that own a GM based EV out there, Flow now supports plug and charge with General Motors. And so if you have a GM vehicle, you can go into your brand app basically, and then you can select and turn on the plug and charge with Flow. And I used it the other day, a few weeks back in Brantford, and it worked flawlessly with my Blazer EV. So, so for those that have a GM EV, now you can do plug and charge and Flow. So it's
excellent. Good to know. Good to know. Ian, any shout outs from you?
Yeah, shout out to the company that makes the tennis racket shaped black fly and mosquito killer that's electrified, because man, I went up north, opened the cabin up last week, and wow, this is so far the season's been, just swat. So, but yeah, no, I guess only other quick shout out is travel's great for the soul and to get out and about. And my trip through Scotland, England, and Germany was great to see the perspective of electric vehicles, renewables, some of the government policies, just in general. It was just really inspiring to see a lot of this type of stuff. And it's like I said, travel's good for the soul. It opens your mind up to everything, and you realize that you can't live in your bubble. You gotta get out there and see the world.
Expand your horizons. Good advice. Good advice. Well, once again, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back again with another issue of Electrifying News soon. Thanks so much. Have a great day or evening or whenever you've watched this. More graphics.
Ian's having fun with that, yeah.